Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fringe North podcast. I'm so happy to be back today. My name is Garrett Ryan. I am with Artist Relations this year for the Fringe North 2022 Festival. And today I am so happy to be joined here by Jess. Jess, if you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself.
Hey, so I'm going by Jess, but I actually publish poetry. I'm an author and I publish under the name JL Fizzell. It's it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's kind of a testament to a very little Jess who is writing stories and has had her pen name picked out since she was 8. So I couldn't let her down. And as much as adult Jess wasn't a fan of the name, I stuck with it. So I write poetry inspired by Northern Ontario, which is where I am born and raised and have never left, though I've bounced around from cities. And just kind of the journey that is life, just human growth and kind of progressing through the seasons of your life and how things change from one place to another without sometimes you even realizing it.
Great. That's so awesome to hear. And I love, and I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit more. I love the Northern Ontario aspect to it. That's obviously such a great piece for our festival, but just I love people working within the, I don't know how to, like, Northern Ontariana, the Canadiana equivalent of Northern Ontario, but that's awesome. So first things first, before we jump into some specifics about Northern Ontario that I definitely want to chat about, tell us a little bit about what you're bringing to the festival this season. I know you're coming in with more of a workshop based thing,
Yeah.
workshop based piece. Yeah, tell us about it.
So, wow, I'm not sure where to start because I'm so excited about this. This has been a pet project of mine for, I think about about 2 years now. And so prior to publishing my books, I worked in mental health, specifically with children and teaching them stress management and all sorts of cool stuff. I did a stint before I graduated from school in youth engagement theater, so kind of combining the public health with the arts piece. And so from there, once I started doing poetry, I was getting asked to do workshops and presentations, and I'm like, I don't know what to bring to the table. Like, I would teach you how to do a haiku, I guess. And then I decided to pull on some of my experience there and some of the kids and the youth I used to work with, and like pull that arts piece into kind of like just getting into a good space within yourself. So that's what I'm hoping to do this year, is kind of take some of the workshops that I've done, but amplify it a little bit so that it's teaching people how to access their inner voice, how to prove once and for all that the arts are for everyone and there's no such thing as a bad artist, only one who chooses to sell for a living or one who doesn't. Personal pleasure or for professional, right? That's the only differentiation. And really teaching people, so pulling again on my mental health experience, how to rewrite their narrative, which is kind of what poetry's done for me. It kind of helps me step back a little bit and look at things in a broader perspective rather than the tunnel vision that you get stuck in sometimes in life, especially in the middle of a pandemic where that's all you see is day after day the same thing, and it's kind of hard to see big picture. So yeah, that's kind of a really broad overview of what I'm hoping to do this year.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That sounds like it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for people to get involved. I'm so excited for the community to come out to this. This is going to be fantastic.
I'm super hopeful. This is my dream, is that poetry is a terrible reputation. And as a poet, I feel like I shouldn't be acknowledging it and rather focusing on the positive, but it does. I feel like a lot of the people I talk to have horror stories from grade 10 English class where they're like, I don't know what this means.
Right.
So I kind of want to show people that, you know, poetry is for everyone, and we're all sharing inspirational quotes on Facebook all the time and really meshing with the lyrics of the songs. Like, it's all poetry. You just have to find the stuff that works for you. So kind of hoping to break some of those barriers in the community and get more people excited about a different art form.
Yeah, for sure. That's really exciting. I think for me especially, not that I have any negative perceptions of poetry. I know some people absolutely do. You're right in saying that, which is so unfortunate. But I definitely have not been exposed to poetry as much in my life. So I'm curious, you mentioned picking out your pen name as a kid. Tell me a little bit about your journey into the arts, into poetry, from earliest point you want to start up until now. It's
Okay.
a broad question,
So
but yeah.
I have always been the artsy kid. I think at this point in life, I've collected well over 25 different like arts related hobbies and kind of things that I do, both like personally and professionally. But I think poetry really started for me in, actually, it wasn't poetry per se, but writing. I was in grade 4. I wasn't a school kid, smart as a whip, but I just couldn't sit still long enough to enjoy the classroom
Hmm.
setting. But I loved English class because we got to write stories, and it was kind of my way to like escape the classroom. And so I fell in love with writing stories, and my mom gifted me an old typewriter, and little kid, big imagination, right? So
Hmm.
I started typing up my stories on this old 1980s typewriter, and I'm like, I need a name, like authors, like there's a name on a book, I need a name. And so I picked JL Fizzell, and I'm not entirely sure why. I wish I remembered. I know that as I grew older, I really appreciated the name, or the fact that it was kind of gender neutral. People saw it
Hmm.
and it really could go either way. So there was no bias going in. This is poetry and it doesn't matter who wrote it. It's just whether or not it resonates. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started, I think it was around grade 4, I fell in love with writing stories. I was writing stories on my typewriter. And then grade 6 rolls around, and we had to do a poetry assignment. And so I wrote one, and my teacher is like, hey, this is really good. And, okay, sure, like I'll take it from you. Like,
Hmm.
and so we sent it off to the Northern Ontario Council of English Teachers, I believe. They're doing some sort
Cool.
of contest, and you're gonna laugh, but I won first place for the poem on the best theme of the environment, which is what I read
Awesome.
when I was an adult. So yeah, that kind of got me into it. And then from there, I just couldn't stop. Like I loved writing stories. I loved kind of um, putting the world, like painting the world in words, I guess is the best way I can describe it. That's
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That I definitely resonate with a lot of those things. I'm a writer myself. I don't write poetry. I'm more work as a playwright, but definitely a lot of overlaps
yeah.
in those fields. And yeah, so I'm interested to hear, what was it like being the artsy kid, being the kid who loved poems growing up in Northern Ontario specifically. Like, do you come from a very artsy family? Did you have a lot of artsy friends? Like,
Yeah.
what did the opportunities look like? Yeah, I'm
So
curious.
within the school setting, I can't say that I ever met a lot of people who were quite as passionate about the arts for me.
Hmm.
I felt like a lot of people just didn't resonate with me on those levels. But around the home setting, my dad's actually a poet, and I remember
Oh, that's
reading
awesome.
through his poems growing up. He's written some for me and my mom and all sorts of different people. So I got to read through that and kind of fall in love with the idea that um, it was almost like at that particular time, I could write a poem and nobody had any clue what I was writing. It was my own little mystery. So I kind of liked the idea that you could do that too with it. I just everything my dad did, I needed to learn, whether it was cooking or fishing or hunting or foraging. I was right in there trying to learn what I could. So
That's awesome to hear that you had um, you were able to do the kind of like the hunting and the fishing and all those kind of classic Northern Ontarian type
yeah.
things, while still being able to do what you loved in the arts as well. It's I find sometimes those things are put at odds, and I'm always happy when people are able to blend those two worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious. You brought up a little bit of sort of the pandemic piece. How has working throughout the pandemic and kind of in this place we're at now, where we're not really fully out of it, but we're in a bit of a better place. Like, how has that sort of changed your view on the effects of art in general, but your art, your poetry specifically? And then how are you kind of bringing what you've learned into your workshop?
So the pandemic has been 50 shades of interesting for me because
Hmm.
not only was it the middle of a pandemic, I had only recently moved back, I think in about 3 months that I'd been in Sault Ste. Marie, moved away from my family, moved back here, and then it was pandemic and I had a newborn.
Mm.
So now I'm away from
Oh.
home. I've got this new little baby I've got to care for and a global pandemic. And I just kind of stepped back and went like, what is going on? Like I'm not sure I could write this. It was
Hmm.
kind of it was a lot. But I think for me anyways, having grown up in Northern Ontario, being able to step back from people wasn't as challenging as I thought it would be. Just because, let's face it, we're kind of used to being isolated up here to a
Yeah.
certain degree, right? So if you want to be alone, there is an entire playground for you to go check out. I mean, provided that you have access to it. There's a lot of barriers to
Hmm.
that. But for those of us that are fortunate enough to have vehicles, like it was kind of cool just to like spend a lot of time going out in nature and really like reconnecting with who I am and kind of my place in Northern Ontario and really coming to terms. And it's kind of funny that you talked about how you love that I love Northern Ontario because it hasn't always
Hmm.
been that way. There was a lot of resentment growing up,
Yeah.
just wanting to get out of here and see the great big world. And then,
Hmm.
so yeah, kind of like really learning to love where I live. Um, and there's actually kind of a movement in Sault Ste. Marie with a few small businesses who coined the term like love where you live. So I've really been embracing that spirit. And as much as it's been a struggle sometimes being away from home, being away from people, trying to figure out how to be a parent for the first time, how to navigate
Hmm.
a pandemic and all of those fun things, it has been a really great experience to kind of grow as a person and redefine who I am, not only like personally, but professionally too. Just a
Yeah.
lot more time being at home, getting to write and not having to balance that with work because I'm just staying at home, hanging out with my little guy, reading him books or writing poems or going out for walks or exploring the forest or what have you.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love the love where you live idea. I am currently finishing off my grad degree, and that's my big thesis focus is on using art to try to recontextualize that relationship with Northern Ontario. So I'm curious, was that the experience for you? Did you find you were able to kind of mend your relationship? Because I know a lot of people, especially the more artsy people, have these kind of complicated relationships growing up in Northern Ontario. They feel kind of pushed off to the side or pushed like
Yeah.
they feel like they need to leave. So for me, I was definitely able to recontextualize and mend that relationship through my writing. So I wonder if it felt like that for you as well.
Yeah, for sure. It actually started pre-pandemic. I had just finished my degree at Algoma University, and I had plans to kind of pursue another degree. And I was trying to pick between Southern Ontario or even further north at Thunder Bay.
Hmm.
And just kind of like I was craving arts and connection because I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of that in the places that I've lived around here. I've lived
Hmm.
in Timmins, North Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, and just never really found that space that I could call my own. But once you started writing and going out into the forest, it was very much, it stopped being about connecting with other people and it started to be about my art and my
Hmm.
connection to where I live and really learning to appreciate it and focus on what I have rather than constantly thinking about what I don't have. And then
Yeah.
the cool thing about the pandemic too is that it forced a lot of us online, which
Hmm.
for me was great because it wasn't a space that I was engaging in a whole lot before. You know, I dabbled in social media, but not to the degree where we're at now. We're on TikTok and connecting with other artists, and it's been really awesome in that respect. And then
Yeah.
doing workshops for people who are 700 kilometers away and just getting to
Hmm.
connect that way. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, that was one of the great opportunities that obviously a lot of downsides having to go online during the pandemic, but that was a fantastic opportunity is just being able to collaborate with people that are cross province, cross country, international.
Yeah.
That has been such a exciting opportunity. Um, so I'm glad you were able to take advantage of that. That's great. Um, I'm wondering what have you seen any sort of growth in the like community aspect within Northern Ontario. I know when I grew up, when I got to high school, there was some sort of poetry events that were happening, like poetry slam type things, maybe once a month, once every 2 months. And they started to actually get quite popular. A lot of young people were coming out and reading poetry. And it was a great crowd of people. That was in North Bay. I'm wondering if you've noticed any growth in that sort of way, like if there's been those kind of like little independent communities coming up and doing readings and things like that.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you bring that up, because I remember growing up, there was nothing.
Yeah.
It was me and my notebook, and I had friends who were in a band at the time. Some of the closest thing I got to a community was trying to tell myself that I wasn't writing poetry by writing lyrics for their music. So
Right.
that was as close as it got growing up, was just hanging out with friends and doing stuff like that. But I noticed as I got older and I moved from Sault Ste. Marie back to Timmins to work for a time, there were all sorts of little communities popping up, whether it was art galleries or spaces at the hospital for local artists to show their stuff. There is this awesome writers group. They've since rebranded, and I can't remember what their rebranding is, but at the time they were the Silverleaf Writers Guild, based out of Timmins. And I think they've worked with you in the past too on bringing in an author fair to Fringe North.
That's
So yeah, I
great.
got to connect with them. I was on the board of directors for a while and connecting with other authors. And even though nobody else was actively publishing poetry, there were still other poets in the room. So it was kind of cool to like blend everybody's style and just connect with people. It was an awesome little group. And I think they still exist. They're just called something else now.
Very cool. How does the sort of communal aspect work with poetry? Because I feel like it's so independent. So like the doing writing circles and things like that and sharings, I'm sure is a big part of it. But is there any room for, I know there is, I'm sure that I know the answer is yes. What is the room for collaboration with other poets, and have you dabbled in that before?
Yeah. I haven't quite, but I have, I'm actually a part of the Ontario Poetry. I can't remember what they're called either. I should know because I pay the membership to the Ontario Poetry Society, I think is what they're called. And so they have organizations across Ontario, and I know that there is one in New Liskeard. And they do events every now and again. But what I'm hoping to do is hopefully set something up in the near future for Sault Ste. Marie and have something here for other poets, because I know every time I go to an event, there's so many people who are writing or are curious about publishing, and I know that people are here. I just have to give them a place to come congregate. So
yeah, for sure. So what as a poet, what are your biggest sort of influences into your work? Like we talked about just Northern Ontario as a whole. Let's say, like, what are some of the more specific aspects of Northern Ontarian society, culture, geography that really resonate with you as an artist?
yeah. So what I love most about Northern Ontario is just that it's really rugged. And I love that descriptor because it fits very well for the people who live here too. There's a certain rugged, like rough and tough quality that you have to make Northern Ontario home. I mean, growing up in Timmins, it takes a certain person to make it through a whole month of -45 and just be okay with it. Yeah, this is just what we do every year. So I was kind of inspired by how that reflects in us as people. But a large part of my inspiration when it comes to Northern Ontario is just really stepping back and just thinking about the way that the natural world works, and kind of applying that to everyday life. So something as simple as watching the leaves blow down the street in fall becomes the leaves are dancing, and you think about dancing and humanity and dead leaves, and all of a sudden you've got this whole poem, and you kind of like connect. It's like connect the dots between the natural
Yeah.
world and the human world. And that's kind of where I pull a lot of my inspiration from. I do a fair bit of exploring, so it's pretty easy. There's so many waterfalls and canyons and like beautiful mountains to climb, and Timmins was nothing but endless bush roads and just driving for hours. So, and the wildlife that you would see and how close you could get to a moose or a bear, and just like recognize like, wow, like this is, I am part of this. This is part of me, and just a real respect for the animals in front of you too. And understanding their nature and your nature and how those play off of each other.
Yeah, I love the contrast between the just breathtaking natural beauty and, like you said, the sort of rugged quality of there's a certain geographic ruggedness as well, especially like the kind of Canadian Shield rockiness, but definitely in the people. Like you really need to have that kind of grit to make it through, for sure. You're definitely right with that. So that's such a beautiful contrast and a lot of rich material to work with.
Yeah.
I'm curious, being from Timmins, do you speak French as well, or
not as well as I would like to. My grandmother was from Quebec, so I did grow up French Canadian on one side of the family, but she was the only one who spoke it, and so I didn't really get to engage with that part of my culture as much as I would like to. But I can carry myself through a conversation and be understood. So.
Very cool. Yeah, because I know there's some cool Franco-Ontarian art happening in Northern Ontario. There's a lot of it. So I was wondering if you had been involved in any of that at all. But
I'll go out and check it out and support it. But to be an active part in the community, I'm working towards it. I'd like to, but it just
for sure. It's a lot of fun to be able to do some writing in other language. Yeah, even if like you have just a basic or like sprinkling some other language stuff, and that's always fun.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because in my books I do play around a little bit with that. So cool. I've got that French Canadian side of me, and then there's my mom is actually from Germany, so a lot of my poetry books have little German phrases kind of scattered throughout them that I know, just to kind of like put that piece of me back into my book and kind of pay an ode to that piece of my ancestry. And then a little bit of French in with some of them too. So it's kind of cool that you say that. Yeah,
absolutely. I love to incorporate the multilingual aspect into writing. It's I don't know what it's very evocative for me as a writer. So that's really cool to hear that you have been playing with that. I have my great grandfather, I think, is German. It was from Germany, and he lived in the Timmins area. He lived in Cochrane.
Oh, cool.
So kind of in the area. That's where I have family up in Cochrane. That's where one half of my family's from.
That's the cool thing about Northern Ontario is you're like, it's only an hour away. I know where that is. I've been many times.
Yeah, exactly. The scale of things is very weird. Like doing the drive from North Bay to Sault Ste. Marie, that's fine. That's easy. And it's like 3 or 4 hours, whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. That's people here. I'm currently in Toronto, and the distance perception here is very different. People don't have, and especially once you're outside of the country, like going into a small country, whenever I've been to Ireland, the idea of driving for more than like 2 hours and crossing the entire country is just mind-blowing. Like 2 hours would bring you from barely one city to the next in Ontario.
I remember that about Germany too, that we went to France one day and they're like, oh yeah, no big deal, we're in a different country. It takes me 7 hours to visit my parents.
Where in Germany is your mom from?
So she is from the Rhineland-Pfalz, which is kind of, I was in geography, you think it never eats sour wheat, the Western Germany. So kind of bordering France along the Rhine River.
Okay, very cool. I've been to Berlin and Dresden before. They're
Oh,
both
awesome.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
those
love
are
Germany.
both on my my bucket list. Do you think for such a small country that you could see the whole thing in one vacation? But no.
It's densely packed. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you could probably like make the drive, but you wouldn't be able to experience it to the
Yeah.
fullest. Yeah, for sure. Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you're able to incorporate some of your heritage into your work. That's
Yeah.
great.
I think it,
Especially Northern Ontario. I love that as well. I love because people are from all over the place and we're pretty new. I mean, the whole like all like Timmins, North Bay, Sudbury, like it's only like 100 years. It's really been established cities.
yeah.
So a lot of people have the a very interesting kind of family histories, get it, like how they, you know, carved out a place for themselves in Northern Ontario.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're right. Because I remember seeing, I think, the Timmins Centennial when I was growing up, and everyone
yeah.
made a big deal of it. I'm like, and now that I think back, and I'm like, only 100 years. Like, wow, that's not a big chunk of time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and even like my um I think it must have been my like great grandparents, but people that I knew remember when there was like no roads connecting to Southern Ontario. Like we were very isolated. Like it's there's been a lot of developments in the last, you know, 100 years, but even like the last 50, 60 years, there's
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's a very different place. I used to have to take a very long trek to get down to Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, very cool. Um, I was gonna. Oh, my second part to that question that I asked a bit ago. I love talking about Northern Ontario and stuff. I got a little bit distracted there. But my second part of my question about influences, um, separate from the kind of geographical cultural influence, do you have any influences from like writers, like poets, like
Yeah.
yeah, who's had the biggest influence on you?
So I feel like my inspiration is just a really eclectic bag of different people that I've kind of fallen in love with over the years, poets, authors. Otherwise, as far as poetry goes, I really love Mary Oliver, nature poet, right?
Hmm.
And her style is very much, and it's kind of funny. I discovered her after I was writing poetry. I'm like, who is this woman? She's brilliant. Um, but I really love her way that she steps back, and her poetry is very much a reflection of what she sees and her internal dialogue and her perception of the world. And I kind of writing the same style, I kind of get her work, and I really
Yeah.
really resonate with that. um Beyond that, I love Charles Bukowski, uh Northern Ontario rugged poet. And then you've got Charles Bukowski, who takes that 10 steps further. He's really crude and vulgar sometimes, but honest. His work is
Hmm.
honest and raw, and there is no beating around the bush with his poetry. So I really appreciate his work. And then obviously the classics, T.S. Eliot and Sylvia Plath.
Hmm.
Hated them growing up, but their work grew on me over
Yeah.
time. The more time I spent reading it and kind of pondering it, it made sense. But that's yeah, I guess those are the poets. And then there's some contemporary poets that I've fallen in love with too. Nikita Gill, she's very much nature inspired and reflective. And I'm loving contemporary poetry and how it's very much a step away um, from some of the older styles, and just again more raw and honest. And there's nothing that can't be untouched as far as a subject, and nothing that can't be unsaid. Or
Hmm.
and Yeah, I appreciate that. But
Yeah.
beyond that, a lot of my style actually comes from some of the classic writers like C.S. Lewis,
Oh,
um,
very nice.
Ellen Montgomery. Anna Green Gables was huge for me growing up. I kind of resonate a little bit with Anne and just her love of books and being kind of the artsy, I don't know how to word that. Just kind of like
Yeah.
to the beat of your own drum kind of person, not quite following the straight and narrow of the path that everyone else is walking.
Hmm.
And then I really loved Charles Dickens and just his kind of um, make the best out of things kind of style of writing, right? As much it was dark and gloomy and kind of sad, there was a lot of hope and like just searching for something better. And I was really inspired by his writing.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic.
I could go on forever about my inspiration, but those are the
Yeah,
the biggest
for
ones.
sure. Yeah, oh, I could too. I love talking about writing and books and absolutely. I like that you mentioned Anna Green Gables. I'll be in PEI a week from now, so
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm hoping to go by and see some of the inspiration there. That'll be cool. Yeah, that's so exciting. And I guess my last question is, what do you find as we kind of touched upon this a little bit, but what do you find as a source of inspiration outside of the art world? Are there, like, what are your biggest passions? Maybe some hobbies, things like that, that perhaps end up sort of filtering into your work. Like what do you do outside of poetry, and then how does that kind of connect back?
What don't I do outside of poetry is the real question. I feel like I play around with so many different areas, and like any chance that I can get to learn anything, you can throw me any subject, whether it's biology, environmental science, arts, fixing an old truck or something, like, oh, sure, yeah, it's like I just want to learn. And I think that openness definitely shows in a lot of my work. But I think what's really driving me these days is just kind of my background in working in mental health and kind of my education and my experience there, and really blending it with the art and finding ways to help people and inspire people that are maybe a little more accessible or not as intimidating as, say, traditional therapy, right? Kind of those baby steps into self-exploration. And not that I have any claim to helping people or that I really deserve them. Not that I don't deserve it, but not that my work is in any way like research-based and this is the goal, but I really believe in the arts and self-expression as the first step in connecting with yourself and just kind of moving towards a better life and a new change of perspective or whatever it might be. And I think that's really important.
Yeah,
so that's been my driving force. And then, like I said, blending that in my experience with mental health and my time with youth engagement theater and Algoma Public Health as an intern, getting to see firsthand that you can take the arts and blend it with an educational, mental health, physical health, whatever it could be, and then inspire the heck out of a room full of people. And it's really, really heartwarming and really inspirational to see that art has that power, and it's so much more than the book on your shelf or the painting on your wall or the royalty you're making off of whatever it is you're selling. It's something that connects us as human. Like, it is the human experience. Like, not a single person I know could have gotten through the pandemic without it. Netflix, music, books, podcasts, whatever you like, any artistic expression, cooking, the the rise and fall of sourdough. So I think that's my my big inspiration, is just kind of helping people in that respect, and pulling on my background without pulling on it so much that I get engrossed in all the well, it has to be research based and it has to be proven by this person and that person, and just kind of taking what I know and making something cool out of it. And that really proving that the arts are for everyone. I feel like I say that every opportunity I get, but I just, I really want people to know that it doesn't matter whether you consider yourself good, bad, terrible, beginner, new, intermediate. Like, I've been doing this for 60 years. Like, it doesn't matter. Come try it out, do it, see what it's all about. So that's kind of my big driving force these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a sentiment worth repeating, that arts are for everyone. I 100% agree. That's great. So I guess just to finish off, this people can watch this whole podcast and have plenty of amazing reasons to come to your workshop, to chat with you, to learn from you. But if you could give sort of a last few thoughts on maybe a quick elevator pitch type of thing, why people should come and check out your piece at the festival this year. Like, what is what's going to be that last thing that's going to bring them in?
Yeah, for sure. If nothing else, it's something to do. We've all been cooped up at home for the last 2 years, so try something new. I know that poetry doesn't have to be everyone's jam, but it could be something different that you never knew you liked. As far as a hobby goes, all you have to do is carry around a pen and a paper, a little notebook, or your phone or something. But as far as the actual workshop goes, what I want to do is just inspire people. I want to know that poetry is something that everyone can do. That you don't have to follow the rules. Haiku is great, but have fun. You make your own style. There's a style of blackout poetry. It was recently invented by somebody just blacking out the words on a page that you don't want, and whatever's left over is your poem. So I really just want people to come out and play around with words, find their voice, find what their actual voice is, beyond all of the, well, I should be this and I have to be this, and all those societal expectations that kind of weigh down on you, and like really dig to the core of who you are. You will get to write a poem. I promise you it will be beautiful because it came from you. We'll play around with some different styles. We'll be there to teach you how to do some of those different styles. If anyone's interested in learning how to publish and some of that process. And yeah, you actually will get something to take home with you, and a lot of hands-on meets creative, meets individual exercises, group stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun and no pressure. We're just here to play around and be creative.
Fantastic. I think this is going to be a perfect workshop for people coming out of the pandemic. It's going to be inspirational, but also just a lot of fun. So I'm excited. So thank you so much for being here. Just a few things before we close off. Our festival is, well, at the time of this, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, that's not my department, but at the time of filming this, a little peek behind the curtain, it is exactly 1 month away. It's July 18th right now, and the festival will be August 18th to the 21st, and tickets are going on sale on August 1st. You can buy them on our website, which is siouxfringe.com. This is a new domain. This is our brand new website, launched this season. And we're gonna have a ton of information on all our social medias. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think we have a TikTok now. We've got whole bunch of places where you can find information. So if you want to look up more information on how to see, it's Poetry Finding Magic in the Mundane, correct?
Yeah.
Great. So if you want to participate in this wonderful workshop, Poetry Finding Magic in the Mundane, keep a look out at our social media, check out our website for more information, and we will be so excited to see you there for the festival. It's going to be a great time. So thank you so much once again, Jess, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun chatting.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to plug? Anything else coming up before we sign off?
Not really, no. Just keep an eye on some of my social media channels. I'm on all of the same ones, making a goof out of myself on TikTok, but having fun doing it. So check me out if you want to see more of my poetry and what I'm all about.
Well, great. That's awesome. Do you know the handle?
They are all the same thing. It's all JL Fizzell. I kept it
very easy. There we go. Got it. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being here. And I look forward to seeing everyone for our next one.
Fringe North runs from August 18th to the 21st. This year, Fringe will be a hybrid festival, so there will be both in-person and digital offerings. To stay updated and learn more, visit siouxfringe.com. We are always looking for volunteers to help out in various areas. If you are interested in volunteering during this year's activities, email suefringe@gmail.com. Like what we're doing? Don't forget to tip the Fringe at paypal.me/fringenorth so that we can continue to help support artists, or e-transfer to suefringe@gmail.com.